Good morning. I am on my way to FreeTown Farm today. I'm going to be dropping off worm composters, and today's video is all about setting up the bedding for your worm composters. I'm also dropping off mushroom spawn from North Spore Mushrooms. They donated a bunch of spawn. We're going to be building a whole mushroom forest, a mushroom garden, over the next couple of months. We'll be shooting videos on setting up the mushroom forest. But today's video is all about setting up the bedding for your composters. If you want to join me for the ride over, we'll talk about worm bedding. So one of the keys to vermicomposting or worm composting is to make sure you don't cook your worms. The worm composter has to be kept in the shade. It should not get direct sun in any place that does not get sun, really. It's really important. And come winter, the worms typically can't take a freeze. You know, they will die off, but they lay eggs that can, so they repopulate. But if you can, you want to keep the worm bin at about 40-45 degrees over the winter. Like mine at my garden is going to be moved into the cellar. So don't overheat them and try and keep them someplace about 45 degrees in a winter. So this is a continuous flow composter, and there's a lot designed like that. And all that really means is you put the food scraps in the top once you put all the bedding in, and that's what we're going to do today. So this is pretty much perfect, about 3/4 of the way. Nice and fluffy. And looks good. In a couple of months, you start harvesting from the bottom the worm castings and all the processed food waste and stuff that you put in there. So as a continuous flow, once you set this up, you're just adding more organic matter to the top. Newspaper, we'll talk about that. You keep feeding the worms, and then you keep pulling out the worm castings from the bottom of the composting. So FreeTown Farm is part of the Community Ecology Institute, a nonprofit organization. It's about 7 acres of farmland, and it's really being used to give back to the community and teach the community. We're trying to build a greenhouse. If you would like to help us with donations, I'll put that information in the video description. But I love working here because of the volunteers, the people, and the mission. Here's FreeTown Farm. Let me park. We'll take out the worm bins and we'll get things started. So here are the worm bins opened up, and like I said, we're going to fill these maybe 3/4 of the way, 2/3 of the way, but we're going to take the bedding to about here. And what we're using is a combination of the peat moss. You could use cocoa coir if you want. Tearing up a lot of cardboard, several shovelfuls of the peat moss, and then we're going to add in these wood chips. And any kind of wood chips are perfectly fine. And then that's lime, which we're going to sprinkle in to the peat moss mix and the cardboard mix just to bring the pH more to neutral. Once that's all done, it's going to go right into the bin. So this is the peat moss and the cardboard mixed together. The lime was thrown in there. Again, you could use cocoa coir. Now I'm going to add in the wood chips. We're going to moisten this lightly. It's going to go right into the bin. So this is the bedding moistened up. You can see how it's a nice dark brown. The wood chips are in there. This looks pretty good, and it goes from this really light color to this dark color. This is still a little bit dry, so we'll add in a little bit more water, but you don't want it to be at the point where if you squeeze it, water drips out, you know, like a damp sponge all the way through. But this will be great bedding for the worms. So nothing fancy, just gonna take it about 3/4 of the way. Grab handfuls, don't pack this down, and just drop it in. Nice and fluffy, ready to go. So this is pretty much perfect, about 3/4 of the way. Nice and fluffy, looks good. Yeah. And we're going to fill up the second bin, and then Erica's going to talk to you about adding the worms, and we'll finish it up. Cool. So I just wanted to cut in real quick. If you want to subscribe to Building and Growing FreeTown Farm, this is where the mushroom area is going to go. You saw the compost, the wood chips, we have logs. This whole area, we put the trail down here, but this whole space is going to be populated with different mushroom spawn, and we hope to grow mushrooms all the way down through there. And we'll be doing the video over the next couple of months now, and then definitely in the spring if you want to join us. So I want to take the time to thank North Spore for donating the mushroom spawn. This is oyster mushrooms, that's the wine caps. They have kits that we're going to be growing for fun, but they were gracious enough to donate everything for our mushroom garden, for our mushroom forest. If you're interested in growing your own mushrooms, you can check them out at their website and use our code below. You can get a discount. Okay, we're in the greenhouse, and again, the temperatures is you don't want these to be in the sun because they'll bake the worms, and you don't want this to get to really below 40 degrees during the winter. This is another way to do worm composting. It's double bins. I like this continuous system because you just put the food in top, and I'll show you how to do that. Erica's going to help me. So these are the worms that we're going to populate the worm bins with, and you really want to put in about 2,000 worms. Because it's November, this will be perfect. This is full of eggs, and they will populate the worm bins come the spring. So if you want to just start putting these right into the bin, just put half of the material right in there. All right, so the bins are getting half of the older worm compost put into there, so they'll have plenty of worms. And when you're filling this, when you first put the worms in, of course, they're not going to be eating a lot, but as those 2,000 worms really get going, these worms can eat through, you know, an inch of material every 2 to 3 days. So they really start whipping through this. Put in an inch of greens. We're not putting in as much as you might normally do because it's winter and there's not a lot of worms.
Could I just take this and like chop it all up really fine and dip it into, like make a smoothie almost?
No, you don't want it to rot. So the whole key is they like fresh food. So if you break it down too small, it's going to break down really quickly. Probably won't hurt them, but you don't even have to go that fine. Just throw it all in there. Just dump in the whole black bucket. If you have things like tomatoes or peppers or bigger pieces of zucchini, squash, whatever, just chop them up just like that. And then after you put the food down, you want to put some newspaper, shred it up like we did, across the top, maybe a ½ inch, just cover it up. They like to eat in the dark. The newspaper will also turn into future bedding. So as you're harvesting out from the bottom, and this is going to take a couple of months to really start working, but as the castings work their way down here, the new newspaper and stuff that you put up top becomes their future bedding. Because this is a tapered design, and most of these continuous systems are like that, the worms don't like to hang out here where it gets more dense, so they all live and thrive right up top here. And that's pretty much all you do to set up your worm composter. All right, Erica, we have 2 bins set up. I know we're trying to get 6, and if you could tell everybody what our goal is.
Hi friends, I'm Erica from FreeTown Farm. So our goal really is, we're a brand new farm and we're really starting to try to build our inputs ourselves, which means compost, worm castings, and this system is going to be really great for us to be able to do that. It looks very simple. We just filled it, and you know, it's important to try to build as much of your own organic material as you can. Worm castings is part of that.
That's perfect.
So this is great. This is a great setup. We're going to be able to harvest from the bottom very easily, and we hope to get a few more so that we can continue to build over time. We have 6.5 acres to feed, so we appreciate you hanging out with us and checking us out, and we'll see you next time.